And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above, all the pedantic and imbecilic twits in the Wyoming mainstream press, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. And once again, I'm proud to announce that it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. Let me tell you how this works. Now, usually during the week, if you want to call in and have something on your mind, it kind of needs to be something that I'm interested in talking about. But on Open Line Friday, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. So if there's something that's been titillating your brain for the week, or just something you came up with, well, give me a call and we'll talk about it. The phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. That's 307-374-8989. The phone lines are open, so if there's something on your mind that you want to talk about, go ahead and give me a call on Open Line Friday. We begin this morning with the drones. And I mean, this is the top story pretty much everywhere. And I talked about it a little bit on yesterday's program, but that we have no idea what these drones are is, first, a little bit unbelievable. But second, if we don't, and you know me, like I like to look at all the possibilities of a given situation, but if we don't know what these drones are, that's way more concerning than anything I think that any of us could possibly come up with. I mean, we do have, or at least we believe that we have, the most advanced military on the face of planet Earth. And yet we can't figure out who is running these things, what they are. There have been some reports that some of these drones are the size of a kitchen or that they're the size of a car. Are you telling me that you can't track that? There was even a story out this morning, and I think it was on The Blaze, Glenn Beck's morning program, and he was suggesting that there are some reports that some of these drones are being flown by hand, that they're man-operated, that there are people in them flying them around. I don't know if any of that is true. I haven't heard of anything definitive except that the White House and the federal government is saying, yeah, we don't have any idea what these things are. They're just flying around, and John Kirby, we'll get to him in just a second, but John Kirby is saying, well, you know, most of these things are, they're absolutely harmless, and, you know, you really don't need to worry about any of this stuff. I don't have any idea what to believe. But the White House John Kirby, the head of White House security, or the security official, whatever you want to call him, has dismissed the drone sightings. Now, here's what he claims they really are, and I quote, "Don't believe your eyes. The Biden administration brushed off the baffling New Jersey drone mystery, even as top lawmakers from both New York and New Jersey have demanded a federal briefing and suggested nefarious foreign meddling could be at play. During the White House press briefing Thursday, White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that federal investigators have been unable to verify any of the 3,000 plus reports of car-sized drones patrolling the night skies in recent weeks. And he suggested that most of the claims of mysterious drones are actually people mistaking them for helicopters or airplanes that are legally flying. That explanation comes despite dozens of citizens, law enforcement, government officials, and even the U.S. Army's Picatinny Arsenal, which is the center of drone sightings in the Garden State, all reporting strange activity in the skies night after night. We've not been able to, and neither have state and local law enforcement authority corroborate any of these reported visual sightings, Kirby told reporters. He added, upon review of available imagery, it appears many of the reports of sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully. Most of them. So wait a minute. Some of these things, you know what they are. Some of them you don't, because you just said most of them are manned aircraft that are operating legally. So you do have an idea of what's going on with them. You just can't identify all of them. Well, here's what John Kirby said about these drones. Take a listen to this.
We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat or have a foreign nexus. The Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are investigating these sightings, and they're working closely with state and local law enforcement to provide resources using numerous detection methods to better understand their origin.
Okay, all right. To better understand their origin, and we're using numerous detection methods, and you can't figure it out. I mean, there's a couple of possibilities here, and all of them are terrifying. But that the White House has no idea what these are, and I don't even think that you can believe what the White House is saying here. I'll get to that in just a second. But you're telling the people, the public, that, well, we're using multiple detection methods to kind of determine what these things are, and we've figured out that most of them are harmless. We don't know about the others, but we're working on it. Oh my God! I mean, Joe Biden may as well have been running that press briefing. Let's continue.
Very sophisticated electronic detection technologies provided by federal authorities. We have not been able to, and neither have state or local law enforcement authorities, corroborate any of the reported visual sightings. To the contrary.
Now, wait a minute. They can't corroborate any of the visual sightings. There are pictures all over the internet. There are news reports on just about every television station, and you can't corroborate any of these sightings. Are we being led to believe that these drones just don't exist and we're not seeing any of them? I mean, don't believe your lying eyes, I guess. I mean, it is absolutely amazing, unconscionable even, that John Kirby, the director of national intelligence, I think that's what his title is, whatever, he's a liar. I'm going to prove that in just a second. But I mean, he's saying that we can't corroborate any of this. Just turn on the TV, John Kirby. That's where you get most of your news anyway.
Review of available imagery, it appears that many of the reported sightings are actually manned aircraft that are being operated lawfully. The United States Coast Guard is providing support to the state of New Jersey and has confirmed that there is no evidence of any foreign-based involvement from coastal vessels.
Okay, so hold on a minute. You don't know the origin of some of them. You said most of them are manned aircraft that are operating legally. But the rest of them, you can't corroborate them. You don't know what they are. You can't. You're using multiple detection methods, but we can say definitively that they're not being operated by any sort of foreign power. We know that for sure. We don't know anything else, but that's the one thing that we do know. How do you know that? If you can't determine any of this other stuff, how can you legitimately say, oh, well, it's not being operated by any sort of foreign actor? We know that for sure. There's no need to be alarmed. Wow.
And importantly, there are no reported or confirmed drone sightings in any restricted airspace.
Yeah, except, of course, over the Picatinny Arsenal. Yeah, except for that. There's no confirmed sightings of any of this over any sort of sensitive area. You shouldn't believe anything that John Kirby says. I mean, a lot of what he said, he gave in his statement is contradictory at best. Well, we've determined what some of these things are, but some of them we really have no idea. But what we can tell you for certain is that there isn't some sort of foreign actor involved. Absolutely unbelievable. And you shouldn't believe anything John Kirby says anyway, because here he was 1 year ago in March of 2023. Take a listen to this.
Important.
Then does the White House hope that the lab leak theory is not true?
We don't have a hope one way or the other, Peter. What we want is the ground truth. Wherever that takes us, wherever the science takes you, wherever the facts takes you, President Biden wants to know so that he can help work with the scientific community to prevent a future pandemic. There's no thumb on the scale here, Peter. It's not about not wanting a certain outcome. We just want the best possible outcome that we can get.
And quickly about the meeting today.
Okay, all right. So that was in 2023. The White House is still vacillating on this whole lab leak theory. They're still calling it a theory when everybody in the known world says that COVID originated at the Wuhan lab. But John Kirby and the White House and his boss, if he's not, head deep in pudding, they're all saying, well, we can't determine where COVID came from, but this thing about a lab leak, we're still investigating, and we just want to have the best possible idea of what happened there. Give me a break. Every credible person that I've heard from in the last 2 years, 3 years, has said, you know what, that whole thing came from the Wuhan lab. There are a lot of studies now of the COVID virus that say that thing is not occurring naturally, that it absolutely came from the lab and it was leaked. And here, still in March of 2023, which, by the way, was just a year and a half ago, John Kirby, and 2 years after COVID was done, completely over with, not a concern whatsoever. 2 years later, John Kirby is saying, well, we're still investigating. We're trying to get the best available information we can. This is the same guy that's trying to give you information on all of these drones. Absolutely ridiculous. The public frustration over the lack of answers hit a peak on Wednesday when U.S. Representative Jeff Van Drew claimed that he has highly reliable sources, and they've told him the drones could be coming from an Iranian mothership stationed offshore, a claim the Pentagon quickly denied without offering any further insight. So again, it's one of these, well, no, you're wrong about that. We can't tell you why. We're not going to give you any evidence to the contrary, but you're just wrong. Same thing John Kirby is saying. We don't really have any answers on any of this, but we can tell you that most of them are manned aircraft, and the other part of them that we don't have any information on, that we can't tell you anything about, we know that that's not a foreign power operating them. Absolute bullcrap. And coming from this administration, when they send John Kirby out and he starts going back and forth, we should just all assume that whatever he says, whatever comes out of his mouth next, is just straight up bull crap. And John Kirby has a long history of doing this sort of thing, and it's quite frankly, there's no reason why any of us should believe anything that guy says. So anyway, we still don't have any evidence, any analysis. We don't have anything on the drones. We don't know where they're coming from, who's operating them. And according to the White House, they don't know either, which is not surprising considering who's in charge over there, or who they claim is in charge. And, I've been telling you for weeks that the most dangerous time in any presidency is right before they're going to leave office, when they have nothing left to lose and they're absolutely a lame duck. There's no reason why they're held accountable, why they're going to be held accountable, to believe that they'll be held accountable, and there's no reason why they wouldn't enact the most radical parts of their agenda. And it seems that that's happening with the Biden administration. I've got several stories here in the stack of stuff to tell you about that. And where we're going to begin, and looking at the clock, we're going to begin after the break. But Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Jill Biden, the entire Biden family got millions and millions of dollars from foreign actors, some of which are hostile to the United States. Millions upon millions of dollars. I think the last figure I heard was something like $10 to $12 million from Hunter's influence peddling schemes. Well, we finally have found out, at least in part, what the Chinese got from all of that money. And what we're getting out of the lame duck Biden White House is that he's pardoning Chinese spies. I mean, who would have saw that coming? So far, he's granted 39 pardons and 1,499 commutations. Merry Christmas, America. We'll talk about it next. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the articles section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, documented to be almost always right 89% of the time, a record that nobody in the Wyoming media can even come close to. And frankly, they gave up a long time ago, but really there's no way that they can come back from the terrible record that they have. That's why you should listen to Cowboy State Politics, the podcast, every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday. Before the break, I was telling you that the most dangerous time in any presidency is right before they leave office, and we are learning that in spades this time around. The commutations and pardons and every handout Christmas gift that Joe Biden is pulling out from underneath the Christmas tree is long and distinguished. And now we know that that list includes, wait for it, Chinese spies. Who would have thought that was coming? And I quote, President Joe Biden announced on Thursday that he was granting 39 pardons and 1,499 commutations in what his administration called the, quote, largest single-day grant of clemency in modern history. But it's not Thursday's set of commutations that have caught the attention of concerned Americans. It's those that were given weeks ago to Chinese spies. Ex-user Nick Sorter posted, quote, that Joe Biden just pardoned multiple Chinese spies and an individual convicted of possessing child pornography. Why? But the thing is, Biden didn't just commute the sentences of these criminals. He did it quietly, only days before Thanksgiving. While most Americans were finalizing their menus and getting into the holiday spirit, Biden commuted the sentence of Yanzhen Zhu on November 22nd. Zhu was convicted in 2022 of conspiracy to commit economic espionage, conspiracy to commit trade secret theft, and attempted economic espionage by theft or fraud, and attempted theft of trade secrets by taking or deception. Definitely a straight-up Chinese spy. Zhu was ordered to leave the United States and never return or commit any other crimes against the U.S., according to the pardon. Similarly, spy Ji Zhaokun was convicted of conspiracy to defraud the United States, impersonating agents of foreign governments, statements or entries generally. Xi arrived in the United States in 2013 on an F-1 visa before later enlisting in the U.S. Army Reserves under a program allowing legal immigrants with special skills to serve, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. According to the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, Xi worked at the direction of high-level intelligence officers in the Jiangsu Province Ministry of State Security, a provincial department of the Ministry of State Security for the People's Republic of China. But Biden commuted his sentence. On November 22nd, Biden, with no fanfare or public announcement, granted clemency to Xi and Zhu, the Chicago Sun-Times reported, noting that the move may have been part of a prisoner swap. Notably, Biden doesn't indicate in either document granting clemency why he chose to do so. Who would have saw that coming? Of course, the Chinese paid handsomely for all of these pardons. Whether that was the quid pro quo when the deal was struck with Joe Biden and the Chinese is really kind of irrelevant right now. We are seeing what the Chinese paid for, and that is preferential treatment coming from this White House. Damon Chironis, the attorney who represented Xi, told the Chicago Sun-Times he was not notified about the clemency beforehand. Quote, I learned about it Wednesday morning when he was released. Chironis told the Chicago Sun-Times it was not something that anyone was made aware of, including my client, which tells you that the deal was struck between the Biden administration and the Chinese government. Even more disturbing, Biden also granted clemency to Shenlin Jin, who was convicted after police found more than 47,000 images and videos of child pornography in his computer. One such video allegedly showed an adult male sexually assaulting a female infant. These are the people that Biden is pardoning. The three commutations were reportedly part of a prisoner swap in exchange for Mark Sweden, Kai Li, and John Lung, according to the Financial Times. But prisoner swaps are typically hailed by the president and the media. When basketball player Brittany Griner was released from Russia in exchange for the Merchant of Death, the largest arms trafficker the world has ever known, Biden held a press conference at the White House celebrating Griner's return. Biden similarly held another event when Wall Street reporter Evan Gershkovich and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan were released. So why was Biden and his administration so quiet about the Chinese swap? Well, the answer is pretty easy, my friends, because those pardons and commutations were bought and paid for months, if not years ago, in the money that was given to the Biden family. I mean, you don't give millions and millions and millions of dollars in exchange for nothing. And all of us kind of wondered, all right, so, and we didn't really wonder. We knew that there was a quid pro quo there somewhere. And, if you're buying influence, there has to be some sort of, terminal act that you're buying, right? What are you buying? What sort of influence are you buying? You're just not going to hand over millions of dollars and just say, well, when you get a chance to it, why don't you look favorably in our direction? That's not how these things work. And that's clearly not how these pardons worked. In fact, what you're seeing here is a direct result of the quid pro quo that was set up by Joe Biden. Well, it's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. If you got something you want to talk about, give me a call, 307-374-8989. That's 307-374-8989. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. Now, one of the other things that Joe Biden is doing quickly, Joe Biden isn't doing anything but nappy time and pudding time, but what his administration is doing before the Trump team takes office is they're selling off all the border wall materials. Yeah, they've said for a long time they were going to allow the border wall to be built. Well, now they are auctioning off all of the steel used to build the border wall at rock bottom prices. From the Daily Wire, and I quote, the Biden administration is using its final weeks to haul a massive amount of border wall materials away from the southern border to be sold off in a government auction, an apparent effort to hinder President-elect Donald Trump's effort to secure the border. Videos obtained exclusively by the Daily Wire from a U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agent show the unused sections of the wall being hauled away on the back of flatbed trucks from a section of the border just south of Tucson, a hotspot for illegal crossings during the Biden administration. The agent estimates that up to half a mile per day of unused border wall is being moved, a clear effort to prevent Donald Trump from continuing his efforts to secure the border. Quote, they're just taking it away from 3 stations, Nogales, Tucson, and 3 Points, the Border Patrol agent, who was granted anonymity to speak freely, told the Daily Wire. The goal is to move all of it off the border before Christmas. Trump made clear during his campaign that he intends to finish construction of the border wall, making use of the materials that have remained untouched at the border since Joe Biden took office in 2021. If the material brought to the border during his first term is sold off, it will significantly delay any progress on one of Trump's flagship campaign promises at the border. Quote, let's see here. Harold Lambeth, the owner of the trucking company moving the materials, told the Daily Wire in a phone call that his company is transporting the unused sections of the wall north away from the construction sites. He said he is unable to disclose further information about the work. No doubt because he doesn't want the corrupt Biden administration to haul him away along with all of the border materials. Now, the auction site shows that the sales occurred as recently as December 4th for precisely the types of materials being pulled from the border. GovPlanet has online auctions set for December 11th and the 18th for more border wall material, which is listed on the company's website as 32 by 91 foot by 7.91 feet steel bollard wall constructions with grout. The bidding for each section is starting at $5. Exactly what you would expect the redcoats to do. And they're not even redcoats, they're Democrats, but exactly what you would expect from them. Let's just go ahead and sell it for pennies on the dollar, less fractions of a penny on the dollar, and we'll just get rid of it as soon as we can. Because, as I continue to tell you, the Democrats and the redcoats, they never stop. Even if they're handed a defeat, they back up and they try to figure out how to get it in the end zone again, surreptitiously or under the cover of night or under the cover of a holiday. They are going to continue with their plan, which is exactly what you've been seeing from the Biden administration. I mean, there should be no doubt in your mind that when there is a lame duck in any office, they're going to do the things that they could not politically do while they still had to face re-election. Well, that possibility is out for Biden, and it's out for all of the trolls in his administration. The only thing that they could possibly face is prosecution if they committed any sort of crime, which is another matter entirely. I've got another story in the stack here. Maybe I'll move this up, but it's Jonathan Turley. Let's see here. Yeah, well, I'll find it. I'll move it up and see if it fits. But all these pardons that are being handed out like cotton candy at a carnival, they're being given to everybody in the administration who was helpful. Even Bill Clinton is trying to get one for Hillary. Not that Hillary committed any crimes, of course, but if you're handing out pardons, we may as well get one for the old gal anyway. So there is probably an effort afoot to make sure that all the people who are operating inside the administration that are facilitating all of this stuff, the pardons, the selling of the border wall, I'm sure there's a long list of things they're doing that none of us know anything about. But there's probably an effort afoot to make sure that they don't have to worry about any sort of prosecutions. This is not what pardons were set up for. And we see this out of every administration. They save the pardons that are politically damaging right until the last minute so that they don't have to worry about any sort of retribution on them. So we'll go to the break, and then we'll come back, and we'll finish up the program. Or we'll continue with the program anyway. Listen to some Christmas music. Back in a second. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program, Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, Wyoming's conservative voice. Welcome back to the program, my friends. It's Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th has always been a particularly lucky day for me. Not saying it is every year, but I mean, things generally go my way on Friday the 13th. And I attribute part of that to my birthday, sometimes falling on Friday the 13th. How unlucky for all of the redcoats and everybody who is trying to screw over Wyoming citizens. That's the whole reason why I started Cowboy State Politics, to expose the things that some politicians want kept hidden. And, you know, there's a lot of that going on, even on people who claim to be on both sides of the political spectrum. There's a lot of malfeasance out there, and the best disinfectant is direct sunlight. And, you know, a lot of times you take some shots for that, but that's okay. I'm here doing the job, and not anybody, a former state senator or anybody else, is going to shut me or this program up. Sorry about your luck. Well, it's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics, and the phone number here is 307-374-8989. 374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. Over the break, I looked for that Jonathan Turley soundbite I had for you, and I got it mixed up. The soundbite that I do have ready to go is about all the January 6th prisoners, and it turned January 6th informants that were in the crowd, and it turns out that the FBI had 26 government informants in the crowd during January 6th. Now, according to Jonathan Turley, none of those were agents. They were all informants. But the question is, if they were in the crowd, why haven't they been charged with everybody else who apparently was, if you were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, you were getting a visit from the feds. Why hasn't that happened to any of these informants? Well, it's because they were working for the FBI. Here's what Jonathan Turley had to say about it on Fox News.
So let's bring in constitutional law attorney Jonathan Turley, a GWU law professor and a Fox News contributor. Jonathan, great to have you. What was your reaction to this IG report by Michael Horowitz?
Well, in some ways, it raises more questions than answers. It does support Ray's testimony that there were no undercover agents in the crowd. I think that for others, there's going to be a lot of concern as to what these sources were doing there. Only 3 of them were told to be there. The question is really these other people. We've had cases in the past where the defense has argued that sources and agents have been extremely active in pushing people towards criminal conduct. We saw those allegations raised in the Michigan case involving the governor there. And I think that some defense attorneys may raise the question as why they weren't told, if they weren't told, about these confidential sources that might have been involved tangentially with their own cases. Because usually defense counsel says, we want to know what assets, what personnel the government had there. So there's going to be questions of that kind that arise. The treatment of these sources are also going to be a subject of continued debate. This is the department.
All right. That's enough of that. So the government historically has used sources to gin people up. And the reason I say the word gin people up is there have been a lot of cases where the ATF and the FBI really have had sources close to people and convinced them to commit crimes. And one of those was Randy Weaver. That's probably the most famous example. An ATF source got close to him and convinced him to cut the barrel off of a shotgun and sell it to him. And Weaver cut the barrel 5/8 of an inch, or barrel of the stock. Well, anyway, the gun ended up being 5/8 of an inch too short to be completely legal, sold it to the guy, and that's what the ATF originally went after. But there have been lots of cases of that where informants goaded people into a crime, and one of those that he mentions was the so-called plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. It turned out that that was pretty much pushed by a government informant, though the folks that were involved in that situation did get prosecuted. And I think some of them got a jail sentence, but I'm not sure. But the federal government has a long history of trying to push people into committing a criminal act. And it sounds, just from this report, that that's kind of what happened on January 6th. Though, I mean, the crowd was massive, and 26 people, not going to influence the whole crowd. But the question is, just about everybody that set foot in Washington, D.C., unless you were a bureaucrat or an elected official, if you were there on January 6th, you got a visit from the Fed. So the question is, as Turley rightly points out, why aren't these folks being prosecuted? Why aren't they being held in solitary confinement for years on end? Why aren't they thrown in the Washington, D.C. gulag? Why haven't they had the book thrown at them? Well, the reason for that is, they were working with the FBI. And the FBI had an agenda to have only one outcome out of January 6th. And the only outcome that was to punish supporters of Donald Trump. Now, there has been a lot of DEI and woke pushback going, not at every level, but we've been seeing hints of it kind of around the edges of where courts and schools and businesses and different entities are pushing back against the woke agenda. One of those that just got slapped down was the NASDAQ. From The Blaze, in an article entitled, "Court Slaps Down NASDAQ Proposal to Impose DEI Standards on Company Boards." A court has ruled against the proposal by the NASDAQ Market Index to impose diversity, equity, and inclusion standards on company boards. The proposal would have been the first of its kind. It would have required more than that the 3,000 companies listed on the index have at least one woman on their boards of directors, one person who is a minority, and one LGBTQXZLPLWD person on their boards. Quote, "We respect the court's decision and do not intend to seek further review." On Wednesday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans ruled against the Securities and Exchange Commission accepting the DEI proposal from the NASDAQ. Quote, "It is not unethical for a company to decline to disclose information about the racial, gender, and LGBTQ plus ZLPWSZ characteristics of its directors," read the ruling. "We are not aware of any established rule or custom of the securities trade that saddles companies with an obligation to explain why their boards of directors do not have much racial, gender, or sexual orientation diversity as the NASDAQ would prefer." Let's see. The SEC, it said it is still determining its next steps in light of the ruling. Well, their next steps is to stop this stupid bullcrap and realize that companies are in the business of making money, not pushing government, stupid government and special interest agendas. A lot of times those things don't line up with turning a profit. Let me give you a great example. I don't exactly remember what the bill was, but there was a bill that related to LGBTQPLXZ F issues in the Wyoming legislature last year. And after it was voted down, I was walking out and I was pretty close to Clark Stith, Drag Show Clark. And I asked him, I said, so Clark, in your law firm, are you going to hire a man pretending to be a woman, dressing in a dress with flashy, crazy drag queen makeup on? Are you going to hire that person to be a receptionist? And he actually said, no, it's a public facing job. And, that position is the public face of my business. So no, I'm not going to do that. And that's how ridiculous all of this stuff is. You're forcing companies to comply with a social agenda that has nothing to do with their business, has nothing to do with skills or merit or somebody's ability to do a job or anything like that. It's just stupid special interests. Well, there's another group that ought to be shaking in their boots because of one of Trump's nominees, and that is all Ivy League schools. They should be shaking in their boots because of Harmeet Dillon's appointment. And I quote, House Speaker Mike, let's see here. No, that was under the picture. President-elect Donald Trump's nomination of Harmeet Dillon to lead the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division has Jewish students breathing a sigh of relief as incidents of anti-Semitism continue to run rampant at universities across the United States. Trump announced Dillon's nomination for the role on Monday, hailing her as a civil rights warrior who has taken on prominent legal battles in defense of free speech, religious rights, and anti-woke discrimination cases. But it's Dillon's outspoken position against Ivy League schools for their failure to combat anti-Semitism that has many students hopeful that help is on the way. Now, if you remember right, after the convention, I think back in May, I had an interview with Harmeet Dillon. And while we didn't really talk about a lot of these specific things, we did have a discussion about lawfare and suing people to get a political message across or get your political motives done or however you want to put that. But I asked her, all right, how do we set our justice system right? You know, there's been a lot of cases in the last 10 years where people have been sued, they've been dragged through the legal system, and all of it has become based on politics. So I asked her, how do we right the ship? How do we get things right? And here's what she had to say. How do we right our legal system? How do we eliminate the two-tiered system of justice that we're seeing?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that. So first of all, one of the reasons I ran for chair of the RNC was I've been very focused on this lawfare issue for many years. I've been fighting it. And the left has been funding the Mark Eliases, but many other lawyers in the country to undermine our voting rights, our voting laws, water them down into non-existence, remove voter ID requirements, claiming that they're racist, basically remove every voter integrity requirement, and we have not matched that. So the left has spent billions of dollars doing that, and the right has spent chump change fighting it. That's something that I wanted to change at the RNC, and I didn't succeed, as we all know. So what we really need to right that is an equivalent or a bigger investment or more efficient investment on the right side. So we need our billionaires to step up and our wealthy donors to step up. We need well-organized efforts on the right, and we need lawyers who are willing to step up and do a competent and thorough job. And there needs to be a mass of us doing it. If it's one here and one there, then you see what happens. You see lawyers losing their bar licenses. You see a lawyer like John Eastman, who, in my opinion, did nothing wrong by giving legal advice to his client privately, loses his license in California. And so I think that we need to have a much more serious effort. A lot of the money raised we raise billions too on our side, but it goes into the pockets of bad political consultants for the most part. It isn't spread around to make sure that we are also blanketing the courts with protective litigation, with litigation to advance our interests, with litigation to challenge the watering down of our voting laws, and so forth. We don't have lawyers who are well-funded like the left. I mean, the money I raise is raising $10 at a time from small donors and a few larger donors to my nonprofit to do public interest litigation involving constitutional issues, that's a drop in the bucket for all the efforts that I make compared to Mark Elias spends tens of millions of dollars a year on corrupting our election system. And I don't have anything like that in my...
Okay. All right. So her whole point is that we have to have a giant fundraising effort if we're going to combat a lot of what we're seeing in politics, with the lawfare, the Mark Elias type stuff, all the, the frivolous litigation that happens. And we see some of that in Wyoming. Every time there's a vacancy that comes up in one of our top 5 elected offices, there's almost always somebody that files a lawsuit and says, "Oh no, we need one person, one vote." Which, okay, that's a legal principle that was started by a court case. It's not in law, it's not in the Constitution. But I think that Harmeet Dillon is exactly right. If we're going to fight a lot of this stuff on the left, we're just going to have to do it with funding. And it's interesting that a lawyer like Harmeet Dillon, and I spent a lot of time visiting with her during the convention, and she's interested in the Constitution, and that's why Donald Trump put her in the Civil Rights Division. And she's going to turn that entire department around, and I think that she is sorely needed. She's a super smart person. I wish her luck. She's going to get confirmed easily. There'll be some pushback from the left, but she'll get confirmed. No doubt about that. More in a minute. I don't know if you've noticed this or not. Jingle bells, jingle bells. That's right, my friends. It's Christmas time. And if you haven't done so already, you are going to need a Christmas tree, which means you're going to have to tromp through about 2 feet of snow to find it. And you definitely want to make sure that you keep your feet nice and toasty warm. The best way that you can do that is to order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the warmest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Welcome back to the program, Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. If you want to be part of the program, the phone number is 307-374-8989. Go ahead and give me a call, and whatever's on your mind, we'll talk about it. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network, on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's really hard to get away from this program. Almost omnipresent, which is what the liberals and the redcoats hate the most about this program. And why they're focusing on little old me? Well, I don't have any idea, except, of course, that this program is effective, telling you what they don't want you to hear. There's a piece in Just the News that I found, particularly honest, I guess. There's been a lot of optimism about what the Trump administration is going to do, and there's very little being discussed of where he might face some difficulties. And one of those is with inflation. From justthenews.com, Trump warns that bringing grocery prices down will be hard, but expresses optimism in doing so. And the reason why that's going to be hard is the increased prices are driven by inflationary pressures. Too much money facing too few of goods, and it drove prices up. And the only way that you can pull that back is by getting that amount of money out of the system. And pretty much the only way that you can do that is with high interest rates. The problem is you have Jerome Powell at the head of the Federal Reserve, and he's insisting on decreasing interest rates. So he doesn't want to pull any of that cash out of the market, which means that you're going to continue to see high prices for quite some time. From the piece, and I quote, Trump's promised to lower costs for everyday Americans on the campaign trail and frequently blamed the Biden administration for the higher cost of living, including on grocery prices. President-elect Donald Trump warned during Time magazine interview published Thursday that bringing the cost of groceries down will be a difficult feat, but was still optimistic that his other policies would make it happen. The former president told Time magazine during his Person of the Year interview that he did not feel his presidency would be a failure if he does not succeed in lowering grocery prices because it's difficult. Look, they got them up. I'd like to bring them down, Trump said. It's hard to bring things down once they're up, It's very hard, but I think that they will. I think that energy is going to bring them down. I think a better supply chain is going to help bring them down. And he's right. If you have more energy, prices will come down. If the supply chain is stronger than it was before, prices will come down. But remember, and this is something that I preached on the program for a really long time, the main driver in high energy prices is inflation. So it's too much printing, too much money, which is why I partnered with freedomgoldusa.com to get you an option so that you can help shore up your finances. Remember, when Trump was president, he did a good job, but he also spent a crap load of money. And gold and silver and other precious metals, they provide a hedge against inflation. So go to their website, freedomgoldusa.com/David. Fill out their little form. You'll get a free consultation and be entered into a contest for $250 worth of silver. Well, the main place that you see inflation is in commodities. Eggs, milk, bread, those things that we use on a daily basis. And from CNBC this morning, and I quote, egg prices may soon flirt with record highs, supplier says. Here's why. Egg prices may approach record highs just about 2 years after they peaked during the pandemic. High pathogenic avian influenza, better known as the bird flu, has killed millions of chickens and reduced the egg supply. Consumer egg demand is highest around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the trajectory of the bird flu outbreak is unclear. It's deja vu for grocery shoppers, as the price of those grade A eggs has spiked in recent months, just 2 years after egg prices soared to record highs. The average price of eggs in the U.S. has risen 38% since November of 2023, according to the Consumer Price Index. There are two primary reasons for this, and keep in mind, this is CNBC, but, well, mention them anyway. Bird flu, which has a high reduced egg supply, or it has a reduced egg supply, and the strong consumer demand that's typical around the holiday season, according to economists and market analysts. And inflation, that it costs more money to get those eggs to market for you to buy them. Ergo, higher prices. But there's another one that most everybody uses on a daily basis that is also seeing high prices, and that's coffee. It's near 50-year highs, and it's going to take years for the rally to run out of the steam. And I quote, this is also from CNBC, so consider the source. A record-breaking rally for coffee prices shows no sign of slowing down, analysts say, with some warning that it could take years for one of the world's most traded commodities to recover. Drought and high temperatures, along with global reliance on supplies from relatively few regions, are regarded as the key drivers for the dramatic price rise. Quote, history suggests that coffee prices will only ease back as when the supply improves and stocks are replenished. Okay, the other reason why coffee prices are so high? Inflation, because we've got too much money floating around and the supply chain is weak. It costs more money to get coffee to market. It costs more money to process it. And thereby, we have to charge more money so that we can get those coffee beans to you. Almost all of this is revolving around inflation. And unless we can get a handle on inflation, unless Donald Trump can get a handle on Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve, you should expect to see these prices continue. Now, energy prices, which are also influenced by inflation, they're more volatile. Week over week in your hometown, you're going to see the prices of gas go up and down. And, typically when there's a Republican president, you see those prices go down. And the reason for that is oil is traded on futures. That is, what is oil going to do in the future? And so a lot of the price fluctuation you're seeing is different future, or the oil futures being traded at a different rate. Trump's in office, so there's going to be more supply, drill, baby, drill, all of that. So it's a pretty good bet that there's going to be more supply of oil. So that's why one of the big reasons why you see the price of energy, go down more with a Republican than with a Democrat. Let's see here. I was going to go to a nuclear power and AI, but I think that's a subject that I'm going to save for Monday. We've only got about 4 minutes left in the program. So instead, let's see here. Let's go to Lisa Murkowski. This is something we talk about a lot on the program, that, a lot of these redcoats, they don't really care about being a Republican unless it is election time. In the Wyoming legislature, you'll see a lot of these folks who vote with the Democrats 80% of the time, yet still insist that they're a Republican. Now, at the national level, you have the same thing. One of those is Lisa Murkowski from The Blaze. Lisa Murkowski says she's not attached to the Republican label. No kidding. She's not attached to Republican principles at all. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska reported that she is not attached to the GOP label and that she would rather have a no label, and she has the voting record to prove it. Murkowski's track record differs from her hardline Republican colleagues. She often breaks from her party at consequential moments, like voting against confirming Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh in 2018 and being the only GOP senator to vote in favor of convicting now President-elect Donald Trump in 2021. Murkowski said she felt more comfortable with no party label than with an identity as a Republican. I don't think I've made any secret of the fact that I'm more a Ronald Reagan Republican than I am a Trump Republican. This is the narrative that we've heard here in the Cowboy state from all of these redcoats for a very long time. They're trying to saddle up to Ronald Reagan, thinking that you're too dumb to realize that Ronald Reagan really was a conservative, that he believed in the free markets, in open competition, that he believed in lower regulation, higher production of minerals, oil, natural gas, all of that stuff. But the redcoats count on your ignorance of who Ronald Reagan really was. And so they can take up the mantle. Well, these new Republicans, they really don't agree with Ronald Reagan. That's us. We're the real Republicans. That's the narrative that's pushed here in Wyoming, because if you're not a Republican, your chances of getting elected are pretty darn low. If you're a Democrat and you want to be in power, typically you have to be appointed or be elected by some board as chairman. We just saw that with the County Commissioners Association. Yesterday, they elected their first Democrat ever. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but most county commissioners, probably 85 to 90% of the county commissioners in Wyoming, are Republicans. But they elected a Democrat to be the chairman of the County Commissioners Association, which tells you that most of those county commissioners, they're not Republican at all. In fact, they're a lot like Lisa Murkowski. They are redcoats through and through. They just claim to be Republicans so that they can get elected. Now, Wyoming and Alaska are similar in that way, that it's a pretty sparse state. Wyoming has a lower population than Alaska, but if you're a Republican, now you got a good chance of being elected. If you're a Democrat, you have next to zero chance of getting elected. But the same thing that we see in Wyoming, we also see at the national level. The truth is that Republican grassroots activists, members of the Republican Party. We got to hold these people accountable. We got to take back the name of Ronald Reagan, give ourselves a Christmas gift, and get the old Gipper back in our party. We burned up another busy broadcast week on the program. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics podcast. There's a new episode coming tomorrow. So until now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboys State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.